Now that you have found so much great information, it's time for you to use that information in your speech. To do that, you'll need to know a little bit about all of the types of supporting materials so that you can decide where and how to use them in your speech. So, for the purpose of this presentation, let's pretend that I'm giving an informative speech on organ donation. I found 5 sources from the free internet and 1 from the Herzing Library. I found an advocacy website sponsored by a pro-donation group called Donate Life. I have found a government website that tells about the process of organ donation and explains the steps of organ donation. And I have found an information website about organ donation. I have also found a government website specific to my own state. And I found a recent news article about organ donation from the Herzing Library. I have also found an article from the Herzing Library. I found an article in the American Journal of Transplantation called Organ Donation and Utilization in the United States, 2004. Because my topic, organ donation, is a pretty common one, I was able to find all of my free internet sources by simply typing organ donation into the databases. I decided to use both Google and Yahoo so that I could make sure that I was getting good hits. If you do this search yourself, you will see that Wikipedia is one of the first sources that comes up. You will also notice that I did not pick Wikipedia as one of my sources. That's because this is a college-level class, and as such, it calls for research from more advanced sources. There's nothing wrong with Wikipedia, and it's certainly possible to use Wikipedia as a starting point for your research. Every article on Wikipedia contains lots of footnotes at the end of the article where you will find links to more advanced materials. If you decide to use Wikipedia, it is these links that will be of the greatest interest to you, because they will direct you to more specific sources. It's not just Wikipedia that you should avoid for this class. You should not use encyclopedias of any kind when you're writing your speech. Because this is a college-level course, you need to move well beyond introductory-level resources. Get your information from sources that are more specific and more advanced. So, after I found my sources on the free web, I turned my attention to searching for a scholarly source. I found this through the Herzing Library website. I also realized that I needed to attend to issues of social and cultural diversity in my speech, so I changed my search a little bit. Instead of looking for, quote, organ donation, I searched organ donation and race. When you are searching on databases, the word "and" refines your search, returning articles that only contain the 2 subjects together, both organ donation and race. The article I found looks at the role of race and the frequency of organ donations, and I can use it in my speech to discuss how different groups of people are affected by the topic. As I knew from last week, I had to carefully evaluate all of my sources and hold them up to the 4 R's. So, as I was talking to you about Wikipedia, Wikipedia probably meets the test of all 4 R's, but it's just not specific enough for a college-level citation. So even though you can find lots of great information from Wikipedia, you'll need to move beyond it because you're in college doing this presentation. But if you're concerned about the 4 R's, you think Wikipedia has great information for your article, then you can go to the end of the article. And all of these little blue links here are clickable and should take you to the sources that the person who wrote the Wikipedia article used. Organ donation and race gave me some great information that was geared toward making my topic meet the criteria of social and cultural diversity. But then I had to take that information and all of the others and hold them up to the 4 R's: relevance, representativeness, recency, and reliability. Now, for the purpose of the informative speech, the advocacy website I found, the one sponsored by the group Donate Life, may not work for me. That's because the website is focused on making sure people become organ donors, and I'm not trying to be persuasive in this speech. I remember from my Google search that the Mayo Clinic has a website about the myths of organ donation. Maybe I will decide to save the Donate Life site for my persuasive speech and use the Mayo Clinic site for my informative speech. I say this because the Mayo Clinic is a more balanced source. It's a respected hospital, and it's probably delivering good, unbiased content on its website. I also have an ethical obligation to mention perspectives that differ from my own, and there are many people out there who think that organ donation is a bad idea. The Mayo Clinic site explains some of the most common arguments against organ donation and then refutes them in a way that will be helpful for me when I move on to the persuasive speech. So, now that I've gathered my information for my hypothetical topic, we can get on to the meat of this presentation, the types of supporting materials. First, you can use facts and statistics. Facts and figures help your audience understand the basics of the topic. The government websites I found are an excellent place to gather these two types of materials. Facts and statistics help your audience understand the basics of the topic, and it's absolutely crucial that you cite your sources in the speech. You might say, according to organdonor.gov, sponsored by the federal government, 18 people will die each day while waiting for an organ. This way, the audience knows exactly where you got your information, and they can make a judgment about the credibility of your source. It's always a good idea to put statistics in terms that the audience can understand. So you might say, this means that in the time we are gathered here to listen to my speech, another person could die waiting for a heart, a kidney, or a liver. Make sure that you cite facts and figures clearly, that you always help your audience understand them in the context of your speech. Be sure that you point out that there's a real difference between facts and opinions, and do not try to pass off an opinion as a fact. It is a fact, according to organdonor.gov, that more than 110,000 people are waiting for an organ. It is an opinion to call this fact the greatest humanitarian crisis of our time. In addition to facts and statistics, you should use testimony in your speech. Testimony is the statement either of a lay person or an expert. You will most likely find lay testimony in newspaper articles or on personal websites. Peer testimony is a good thing to use in your speech because it lets your audience know the opinions of regular people. In my speech about organ donation, I would most likely find lay testimony in the newspaper article I found about a boy who was an advocate for organ donation. From a small daily newspaper in Redlands, California, the article contains a quotation from the boy in question, who said, "There's just a lot of fears about organ donation. If you think about it, they don't make sense. Some people say that if I'm a donor, they'll care less for me, but they'll fight just as much for you as the person who needs your liver." This is an example of lay testimony, but I could also find expert testimony for my speech. The best place to look for expert testimony is the article I found from the Herzing Library. The authors of this study argue, organ donation is vital to the success of transplantation. This is a great piece of expert testimony for my speech, and it has the advantage of lending the prestige of expertise to my speech. My audience doesn't have to take my word for it. They can instead take the word of an expert in the field. In this case, the doctors who authored this study about organ donation and race. The next type of supporting material you can use in your speech is an example. Examples help bring your speech to life. It's a great idea to try to pair examples with facts and figures. That way, you can tell a story and then support that story with statistics so that your audience knows it is representative. I might, for example, tell a story about a little girl who's waiting for a new heart so that she can live the full life she deserves. I didn't want my audience to think that this little girl is the only person waiting for a heart. Instead, I want to use this story to help them understand the need for organ donors. In my case, I would follow my story with information about how many other people also need hearts. As your textbook explains, there are 4 types of examples. A brief example may quickly mention a specific instance, but doesn't go into more detail. An extended example tells the entire story for the audience. This is a great tool to use in the persuasive speech when you're trying to appeal to the emotions of your audience. A factual example is a case study from the real life of a person, and a hypothetical example is not a real example, but an imagined one that is taken to be representative. Keep in mind that on a scale of persuasiveness, a hypothetical example is the least persuasive, because the audience has no way of knowing if it's true. Finally, in your speech, you will use narratives. Narratives are stories that convey an idea or establish a mood. Narratives are excellent devices to use in the introduction and conclusion of your speech because they can help draw the audience into the speech. These kinds of narratives are called embedded narratives. Vicarious narratives, the kind that start with picture this or imagine this, can also be useful in a speech. If any of you remember the 1980s sitcom The Golden Girls, the character Rose was always using vicarious narratives to make a point for her roommates. Finally, let's take a look and look at one of Rose's narratives that she...
I mean, this is not the same guy who screamed, "Thank my toenails, we just invaded Korea." It was kind of attractive. Oh, but I don't know, it's so hard to trust them. I know what it's like to trust somebody who's betrayed you. You're not going to believe this, but I have a St. Olaf story about this. I believe you. I just hate you. Well, Gunhild Bjorndunker, St. Olaf's tallest woman. Of course, nobody ever made fun of her for that. Anyway, when old Space Needle was in high school, she drank some cherry herring and made love in the backseat of a Fjord Fjerling. Local car. And she got in trouble, if you know what I mean, Dorothy. Knackend up and shingle. She knows what you mean. Anyway, her boyfriend, Jup Hernsberg, St. Olaf's only bald high school student, had to marry her. Well, why would she marry a guy like that? Because I was young. I'm sorry, Rose. This is your story. Go on. Well, anyway, after 38 years of marriage and a painful divorce, he finally came back, having invented Hernsberg's press-on warts. Who bought those? Hags, mostly. But he was successful and he wanted Gunilla back. Well, what happened to her, Rose? Skylab fell on her. What is the point of this story? Be thankful for your help.
Finally, you might use a master narrative in your speech, meaning that your whole speech is told in story form. While you may have used this technique in your introductory speech, chances are you'll not use master narratives in your other two speeches because you will be using a specific kind of speech design. So now that we've taken a closer look at supporting materials, the next presentation this week will talk about structuring and outlining your speech.